This season of Severance has given viewers so many details while leaving plenty of things open-ended, yet approaching the season 2 finale Cold Harbor, it felt impossible that there could be a final shot as intense as season 1's She's Alive moment. But this sci-fi thriller just keeps delivering as Marquez betrays his outie and chooses to stay on the severed floor with Helly R rather than leave with a freed Gemma. But before we get into his reasoning, if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button, drop a like and comment on the video, and if you're able, please sign up for channel memberships for exclusive content, which really helps us out. Anyway, back to the video. So, despite the shock of this situation, when looking back at the rest of the episode, this betrayal or resistance, depending on which side you choose to support, was almost inevitable. In fact, there are many reasons to explain Marquez's choice. He feels neglected, paranoid, angry, and wants to be the one in charge for once. However, the most straightforward explanation is that he simply wants more time with the person he loves, and no matter how much this move may make viewers feel more conflicted, it's impossible to deny the rationale of his motives. Severance may be a sci-fi dystopian thriller, but at its core, it's also a story about the desire for and power of love. When Marquez runs off with Helly, it's unclear where they are going. Even Scott says in the post-finale featurette following the episode that he doesn't think the two are thinking 10 seconds into the future. Instead, it's a beautifully defiant spirit, not towards or from anything, but one taken together, showing how he and Helly only care about each other and not the final result. Their end goal isn't about destroying Lumen or even saving someone else's wife, but maintaining a hold on what they love most. Some may see this as unfair considering how broken Gemma is now, though there are valid arguments for Marquez's point of view. He most likely feels like Mark Scout had an unfair amount of time with his soulmate in comparison, as the outie ironically points out in the cabin when they talk via camcorder. This also connects to the fact that Marquez still feels like his existence pales in comparison to his outies, as even the offer of reintegration is hard for him to believe will result in a fair split of their personalities, or if it's even real. Herein lies the biggest issue, and possibly even the greatest motivator for Marquez to choose Helly in the finale's closing moments. He cannot trust his outie, and it's easy to understand why, not just after seeing what Marquez has gone through, but because the scene with them communicating in the cabin displays this conflict so directly. Mark Scout didn't care about what was happening to his innie until he needed him. Otherwise, he was happy to remain in ignorance about what was happening on the severed floor. Additionally, Mark's innie doesn't know if anything his outie says is true, especially once he pairs up with Miss Cobell. The greatest example of this conflict is how Mark Scout tries hard to relate to Marquez during their camcorder exchange. Not only does Mark's outie not understand what the innies experience, assuming that whatever has happened at Lumen has been a nightmare to go through, but it ignores the idea that even if it isn't the perfect life, it's the only life these innies get to have. Calling it a nightmare therefore implies right from the get-go that outie Mark intends to bring that life to a close. From the very first moment in their interaction, the lack of empathy Mark Scout demonstrates for his innie, even if he is also coming from a place of worry about Gemma, shows that this alliance is doomed to fail. The cabin scene in the season 2 finale also highlights the unbridgeable gap between innies and outies. The slow breakdown in communication, with messages becoming shorter and shorter until Mark Scout begins ranting that his innie is a child, demonstrates how quickly the bond can be broken when these two personalities are put somewhat face to face. When we look at Mark Scout's plan, all of it benefits him and risks his innie the most. Yet, there is also no other way for outie Mark to get what he wants, which is a way to free Gemma from Lumen. It's also possible to understand Marquez's complicated reasoning for choosing Helly over Gemma from both points of view. From the perspective of Mark Scout, his innie is absolutely a traitor in that moment, with Gemma's heartbreaking pleas from the other side of the door a haunting reminder of how close they are to this exhausting and trauma-filled journey being over. However, there's also the argument that Marquez deserves his own life, especially when considering that he did satisfy the conditions of his alliance with his outie in getting Gemma off the testing floor and through the emergency exit. In hindsight, Marquez's decision may very well be a turning point that viewers return to after Severance is long concluded, as well as the moment the characters were put on a collision course with whatever the greater conflict will now be moving forward. Marquez may have made himself the most polarizing character in the series with the likes of Miss Cobell or even Natalie. Yet, when you look at what led up to this shocking decision, was there ever a world in which Mark didn't choose Helly?